you'll see how everything is divinely guided. But for now, just trust your intuition more than you have in the past and take action on that intuition. Hello.
How are you, my friend?
I am great.
It looks beautiful where you are.
Yes, and check out the backdrop here.
Are you at home? Are you in Florida?
Yeah, Aventura, just a little bit north of Miami.
Oh, you're in Aventura. It's beautiful there.
Yep.
Yay! Okay, so hi, I'm seeing Ed on here, Claudia, so many people. I love all these beautiful faces. Hi, Christina. How are you? Okay, so yay! I'm happy that you're here. How are you feeling? You feeling better?
Feeling much better, thank you.
Okay, good. Well, I don't know if you got a chance to hear. I give a very, very, very brief intro that really doesn't capture everything that you've done and everything that you are, but I was hoping that you could maybe just give us, there's a few hundred people on here who probably haven't met you yet, just a little bit of background on your journey. So, you're known as the SEO guy, which I was sharing with the audience. I didn't even know that at first, because our companies are just kind of figuring out how crucially important that is right now. But just we got a chance to connect through Roger's group, and just what we connect so much on is spirituality and biohacking, obviously. But I just love for you to share with everybody your journey and like how you went from this area of your life and focusing on that success that comes through business to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I started my journey in spirituality and in biohacking in 2009. I had a big breakthrough. I was going through a divorce, and I was not in a good place. I was depressed and not very optimistic, not really myself. And 3 different friends all told me to go to this Tony Robbins event.
Yeah.
Unleash the power within. And, there are no coincidences. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that at the time, that there are no coincidences, but it certainly struck me that 3 different people, all within a short time period, were telling me to go to this particular event. And I thought, Tony Robbins, he's kind of like a infomercial guy or something, right? I didn't really know anything about him. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Yeah. I didn't know I was going to be walking on hot coals in my bare feet.
Yes.
No idea. And yet I did. I walked on 2,000-degree hot coals in my bare feet at the end of the first day of the event in October of 2009. And that was a turning point in my life. I figured if I could do that, I could do anything. Yeah. I didn't burn. I didn't even get a blister. Yeah. And so why am I holding off on getting LASIK? Why am I holding off on getting a hair transplant or changing my diet or changing my workout regimen or actually starting to work out? Like all those different things that I thought were hard or scary, I just realized I could burst right through. There's a great book called The Tools. And there are 5 tools in there. And one of those tools is to imagine the fear that you're facing as dust, like in the air, just this black dust that you can walk to and through, even run towards and through, and it won't hurt you. And you get to the other side. It's a powerful visualization, and it's even more powerful to do it. To just
that is could we just pause for a second there, and could you walk through that just real quick again, because there's so many people that are still joining. That is incredibly powerful.
And the background on that particular tool from there are 2 authors, I forget their names, but the one author, he had a friend in high school who was an all-state football player. It's really, really phenomenal football player. And he asked his friend, what's your secret to success? How do you do so well in football? And he says to his friend, well, I just go and get myself tackled as quickly as possible by the biggest, toughest, roughest player on the opposing team, and then I'm invincible the rest of the game.
Wow.
And so his impetus for an inspiration for that tool of visualizing the fear that you're facing as a dust cloud that you can walk through or run through was inspired by his friend, who would just go run, get tackled as badly as possible, and become just a force to be reckoned with the entire rest of the game. So that was really powerful when I read that. But that was well after doing the firewalk. But that firewalk just changed my life. And then 10 months later, I was a remade man. I was unrecognizable from the previous version of myself, literally unrecognizable. I would show up at conferences, SEO conferences, where I would normally speak, and I would go to a cocktail reception or some sort of mixer, and I'd hang out in a group of people who I would know, and they didn't recognize me, and that was so fun.
Wow.
Of course, that was 2010. That wouldn't work anymore because everybody knows me as how I look now. But if you go to getyourselfoptimized.com and you look at the About page, you will see a version of me from 10, 12 years ago that you would say, oh my goodness, who is that guy? I don't even recognize him.
I'm going to look it up right now. Get Yourself Optimized, your podcast.
Yeah, my podcast, the podcast website, the one on biohacking, personal development, and spirituality.
Okay. So is this the one we're going to be chatting on when I do your podcast? Is it Get Yourself Optimized? Okay. So wait 1 second. So you haven't updated your picture? Hold on. I'm going to the About.
So there's a side-by-side comparison. The before.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Wow. Okay, so I wouldn't say you'd be unrecognizable, but I mean, it's a huge difference.
Yeah, so that was 2007, that photo. So if you hold it up to the camera, if you hold it up to the...
You guys look, can you see that? Is there a glare? Can you see it?
So the before one, you can kind of see it. What you can't see because of that little icon in the way is I was really balding, and I went and got a hair transplant. I did that in December, on December 31st of 2009, the hair transplant. It was the worst New Year's Eve ever. Oh. It was so painful. And my
worst
kids...
and best, though, right? Like, worst and best. So, one of the best, I would say, maybe.
What's that?
I said worst and best, though, right? Because sometimes our worst moments give us our best
Oh, of course. I mean, I wouldn't change that for the world, but it was rough. I couldn't hardly move. I was in so much pain, and my kids who are grown now, they were teenagers at the time. They were so angry at me that I couldn't drop them off at all their different places where they were going to go hang out for New Year's Eve. I was just beside myself in pain. Totally worth it. Totally worth it. But the exterior changes were actually smaller than the interior changes. Who I was on the inside was completely remade, rebooted. And then in 2012, when I had that spiritual awakening, because I was agnostic my whole life up until age 42, that is even more significant of a reboot. I'm in awe of this magnificence of the experience of reality of this physical realm, because I can see more of the bigger picture than I could when I was agnostic. I went to India on a platinum partner trip with Tony Robbins and several hundred other plats, and wow, I mean, it was just what an incredible experience the trip was. And the highlight of it for me, the the turning point or the asymptote or whatever the word is for inflection point, I guess, for me was I got touched on the head by a monk, a oneness monk, and it changed me. I felt like I was so connected to the creator and the fabric of creation. I had what I would imagine be like an LSD trip because I saw everything in Technicolor. I went outside and the grass and the trees and everything was it was the most brilliant green I had ever seen, like a cartoon. And I've never done drugs, but I could imagine that that's what an LSD trip would be like. I was otherworldly, and that changed my life. Much more so than the makeover I went through several years earlier.
Well, I would say looking at these two photos, you look younger and more radiant, and that does come from within. You know, that is love and love for the self. I feel like it's what really gives you that flow.
Yeah. It's unconditional love for everyone. I think is the difference.
Yeah, and that universal, that energy that comes through, that love, that universal love that's kind of radiates through you. Wow, really.
And so then all these miracles started happening, and that's the thing, we don't see it at the time, but in retrospect, once the veil is thinned, you can see where all the divine intervention happened. I could see only this year, after another big spiritual awakening, which I can get to, I could see where divine intervention saved my life when I was in my early 20s, fell asleep behind the wheel while I was driving all night. I had a trailer behind me, a U-Haul trailer. I ended up in a ditch. I hit a light pole going 65 miles an hour. It popped out of its socket, and I walked away without a scratch. If I had fallen asleep 30 seconds later, I would have hit the overpass, and I would have been gone. And I just thought, wow, how fortunate. But no, it was actual angelic intervention, my guardian angel saving me. I couldn't really grasp that until just recently. And so as the veil's thin, and that's happening for a lot of us, the veils are thinning, we're starting to see more of the bigger picture. And it's the miracles are everywhere. Like there's one that I love sharing about how I met my wife Orion, who you know, and that was at the next Tony Robbins event 2 months later, after the awakening I had in India. I was at Date with Destiny, and turns out she was my date with destiny. I wrote up my relationship vision as part of my poster board of like the power virtues and mission statement and all that sort of stuff. But after writing down the relationship vision of who I would be, as well as who my partner, my soulmate would be, and how we would both show up for the relationship of our dreams, I prayed to God, to the divine, for her to show up right away. And I was very, very precise and specific in asking for that to happen right away. And 12 hours later, we were introduced by a mutual friend. And I knew within 5 minutes of meeting her that she was the one, that she was my soulmate. Because I, in India, had learned how to give these oneness blessings. They're called Dikshas. Same thing that I had received, I was able to give. And she hadn't gotten a Diksha during the event. It was the whole last evening of Date with Destiny. There's this whole blessing ceremony, and a whole bunch of people get touched, but not everybody. And she hadn't. And I'm like, oh, I can do that. I know how to do that. I got that in India, a little training on how to do that. And she's like, oh, great. Can you do that for me? And you pray for the person as you're doing it. The more you want it for that person, the more divine grace flows through you into that other person. And I was praying for her like she was my soulmate. And I knew it. And so 18 hours after we met, I told her I loved you. And she said it back. And 9 days after, I proposed to her. And a hot air balloon in the Vegas desert. So that was and by the way, she said no. she said not yet, because it had only been 9 days. I mean, it is a little crazy to propose to somebody 9 days after you meet them. But I knew I had the ring and everything. And 9 months later, I reproposed, and she said yes at that point. And I also, where I proposed that second time was more meaningful for her, because she had prayed for me to show up 48 hours prior to us meeting at a little waterfall at the event center at the resort, the JW Marriott in Palm Desert. So that's where I proposed to her the second time, and she said yes.
It's such every time I've now, and thank you so much for sharing that with the community, Stephan. And I've now had the privilege and the blessing of hearing that story a few times, and every single time you tell it, I can feel my heart and my soul and my physical body smiling, because it is such a beautiful story. One of my favorites. I have to tell you, I've actually shared your story with other people before, because it is just such a beautiful, magical story. And you guys, it's been how many years now? And you also have a little one who is
So we've been together 8 years, almost 9. And now we've got a 22-month-old, and he's amazing. He's such a joy, and he's a miracle. Miracles are so available to us. Orion, my wife, was given a 5% chance of being able to conceive. 5%. That was a 95% no-go, and yet on the first try with IVF, it worked. Yeah, beautiful, absolute miracle. And so one thing that I want to share that I think is really important is to think about miracles as something that can be an everyday occurrence.
Yes.
And not just for you and your family, but that you can be the delivery person for God's miracles. I've been reading a book called You Were Born for This by Bruce Wilkinson. Again, it was a miracle that I found this book, because a guy reached out to me out of the blue from something I posted in a Zoom chat on an I Love Marketing Zoom meetup back in January. He liked what I had to say about ADD being a superpower and so forth. And so he said, "Oh, can I talk to you more about that?" And turns out he was putting together a mastermind of men entrepreneurs who were working on going through this book together to learn how to deliver miracles to other people all the time. And one of the secrets to this is to simply ask, to be available and to ask for it. There's this verse in Isaiah in the Bible where Isaiah is at the feet of God, and he's asking for God to deploy him to deliver a miracle. He's like, "Here I am, Lord, send me." And just making that request, letting God know that you are available for the difficult challenge of stopping at the side of the road when you see somebody, or like whenever you get the nudge. So powerful.
It's so powerful, and thank you for sharing that. And I would actually just love to add to that. It's so timely. I had, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the female quotient, and Shelley Zallis is she's actually, I think, started her career in marketing. She has this really huge community of women supporting female entrepreneurs. And we had an Asia regional dinner last night, online, all online. And it was an event, and I sat on one of the panels, and we were just talking about, how we empower, women specifically, of course, because that's the topic, be sort of the center of economic recovery, and like what we can do to sort of help each other. And it's funny, what I had to say is similar to what you said, which is sometimes it's as simple as asking another person. So when I meet someone for the first time, or even in my conversations on a regular basis, one of the questions that I now sort of add in is just, how can I help support you? You know, is there anything that I can do to help support something that you're struggling with or something that you're excited about? And it usually comes up in the conversation somehow. And that's exactly what Stephan's talking about. I mean, we have the power to deliver a miracle to someone else, and we're just not even aware of it.
And to listen to that intuitive hit that comes to you, even if it seems bizarre, just trust. One of the guys in my mastermind, the one where we're reading the book together, he shared with us that he was at a restaurant having a meal with his family, and the waitress seemed a little distraught, or something just didn't seem right with her. And he just felt like saying this out loud, like, how would $107 tip sound to you right now? $107. That was exactly the amount of money he had in his wallet. And that's what his intuition told him to say.
Yeah.
And she started bawling and showed a text to him of an exchange between her and her mother, where her mom had said, I need medicine for my disease, and it's $107. Do you have it? And she wrote back, no, I can't even pay for my own family. I'm sorry. And here came the $107 the same day.
Wow.
Right? We are able to deliver those kinds of miracles, those without a doubt signs. We just have to open ourselves up to it. Just asking the Creator for that is the first step, and then following the nudge, like, oh, I should approach this person even though I'm an introvert. I should give money to this particular homeless person even though I wouldn't normally have, because I would have judged the person as somebody who was going to use it on drugs or whatever. Like, I encourage people to step outside your comfort zone and be receptive to the nudge, the intuitive hit.
Such a beautiful, beautiful reminder. And I apologize if there's something on my contact lens, so if you see me looking away or rubbing my eye a little bit, I just want to let you know that's what it is, and to let the audience know that's what it is. As I'm looking, I'm seeing a fuzzy dot. So, but thank you for that reminder, Stephan, because I think that a big part of the journey is getting those reminders. So even now in this moment, like, this is a miracle for so many people. There's 600 some odd people on right now, and I think that reminder alone is a miracle. And you know, we're a little bit more than halfway through, and I would love if you could share. You know, you shared your story, thank you, and some of your learnings. But there are so many people, especially in the past year and a half, that are struggling with embracing the intangible, right? And just to have faith and belief. And I know that there are people that are listening here that are going to be so inspired by your journey. And then there's also going to be people that are listening that can't connect to it because they need a step or 2 steps or something to kind of get them going and in that direction. What are some things that you can share? And I don't want to call them a takeaway necessarily, because there's so much in our journeys, in your journey. But, you know, I know you've mentioned a couple books, The Tools being one of them. Were there any, and of course, Tony Robbins and UPW and Date with Destiny, that now, which is much more accessible for people because it's offered online. But what were other tools or practices or things that you did throughout the course of your journey that you can tell someone who's just trying to figure out how to get started? Like maybe this book or this program or this podcast or this practice, you know, that you could possibly share with us today?
Yeah. So praying is fantastic. It's really, really important. Every prayer is heard. Not every prayer is answered in the way that we would like it to be answered, because that's not the way the universe works. Sometimes we get a lesson that is for our highest and best good, but we don't see it at the time.
Right.
The car crash or the illness or the marriage that breaks apart or whatever the hardship is actually yields a beautiful gift. And what my wife Orion likes to say is the gift with the bow on the bottom.
I like that.
Yeah, and I'll give you a quick example of that. June last year, we had a health scare in one of our family members, and it was very sudden. And because I happened to be, again, there are no coincidences, but I happened to be interviewing a psychic, a medium. So not all psychics are mediums, but all mediums are psychics. I did not know that. I just happened to be interviewing a medium at the exact moment that this happened for this family member in a different part of the world. And Orion knew that I was interviewing a medium because I asked her ahead of time, do you have any questions for him? He's the real deal, no doubt. His name is Mark Nelson. And again, I felt the intuitive hit to ask him to be on my podcast. I met him on another mastermind Zoom call. It was a metal meeting, men's group metal. And I just knew that I needed to have him on. And I was really busy getting ready to move to Florida. So I cleared my schedule. No podcast interviews for 3 weeks, but I had to have him on. And of course I had to have him on. Of course, because now in retrospect, I saw that he needed to be on the podcast interview with me to save this family member's life, which he did.
Wow.
So when Orion slipped in during the interview with a piece of paper with a note saying, is this person having a stroke? I asked him, and his answer was yes. And here's what's going to happen if she doesn't get to the hospital right away. And she was not going to go. She did not believe it was a stroke or anything serious. He absolutely saved her life. And so that opened the door for me to, consider that whole psychic and mediumship realm. I did end up having a reading with him. My first reading I ever had in my life was with him last year, a couple of weeks after the interview. And again, no coincidences. He happened to live 10 minutes away from where we were living at the time in Encino. So these things are incredible. And in retrospect, you'll see how everything is divinely guided. But for now, just trust your intuition more than you have in the past and take action on that intuition.
I mean, I think that's our soundbite, you guys. That's the most powerful thing that you can remind yourself about what Stephan just said. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to share with you some thoughts I have kind of along the same lines that really only came to me recently. I was doing a podcast interview with someone as the guest, and we were talking about my journey and how, that day that I had almost died after I had experienced this massive hematoma post my fourth surgery. And I'd shared about that day before. I shared about that experience now more than I ever had just in the last couple of years, because for some bizarre reason I had shame around that for a long time. I don't want to say bizarre. I had shame around it for a long time, and considered myself to be a very private person, so it wasn't something that I shared. And then realizing that there are so many lessons to be taught there, not just for myself, but for my community, I started to share. I had gone through and I told this so many times I can't even remember how many times I've shared it. And for some reason, that day in this interview, I'm hearing myself talk about that experience. I'm sort of hearing myself from here, though, up here. It's hard to explain. Sometimes when I look at it, I can go out of my body and I can see, but this time I'm hearing myself almost from like a third dimension, a different dimension. It's a little hard to explain, but I know you understand. Yep. So I'm hearing myself tell it, and even though I'm so grateful for everything that had happened. I'm grateful that I had a client that knew a surgeon that had a trauma unit close by, and they were able to see it. I'm so grateful because I'm here today, and I've learned so much through that experience. Even though I'm already in that place of gratitude, as I'm hearing it, what popped into my head was, this was divine. This was divine. This was divine. Every moment. So my client picking up the phone that day, that was divine. You know, my client happened to know the medical director at Cedars, that was divine. That medical director having a place 10 blocks away from my house that had an OR, that's divine. Him calling in his team on a Saturday afternoon and them coming in without question was divine. Me having lost so much blood that he needed to transfuse and making the decision not to, despite any type of liability that could come after that. That was divine. I mean, every moment. And then it occurred to me, it's not just divine. It didn't occur to me. It was just a reminder that it's not just divine when miracles happen. Every single moment we experience is divine. Every single moment is a miracle. So us having this conversation right now is divine, you know, and it's a miracle. And for some, it just, that sense of knowing and that reminder, it just came through in such a powerful way, in a different way than it ever had. Even though I have gratitude, I have awareness, but it was just this reminder that all of those moments are divine. Every single moment we have is completely divine and a miracle in and of itself. Yep. Even the challenging ones, you know, even the ones that don't seem to feel that way, even the moments where the bow is on the bottom of the box, you know, right. Those are equally divine. So thank you for letting me share that with you.
Yeah. I mean, it's so powerful, and to piggyback on what you were saying and think of it as divine and preordained. Mm-hmm. Just like the quote-unquote chance meeting of me getting introduced to Orion at the very end of this event in Palm Desert, at Day with Destiny. That was meant to happen. Mm-hmm. We had a soul contract to meet in this lifetime and become soulmates. Mm-hmm. Prior to incarnating. So it wasn't a chance meeting. It was a divinely inspired event that was meant to happen. Some freak accident that seems like so bizarre. How could this happen? Like to ruminate on it for so many hours, some negative event like an issue, a health issue or whatever, is not only counterproductive, it denies the divinity and the sacredness of that event as part of your soul path. Mm-hmm. So a quick example for me that was irritating but not life-threatening is one of the parts of my makeover was to get braces, because my teeth were so like all over the place my whole life up until the time I got braces in my late 30s. So I'm getting braces and everything's going fine, but at some point this freak thing happened where it triggered one of my molars to rot from the inside out. Oh. Mm-hmm. It became like a shell, essentially. And if I had it pulled, it would have disintegrated.
Oh, wow.
So, like, oh, this is a 1 in a million sort of thing. That doesn't help me. I don't need to know how rare this thing is that I'm the one who gets hit with it. But then once I was able to ask, like, here's the thing. When you plug in to the fabric of creation and to the creator and everything, you're not just praying and talking to God, you're also listening. Right? You're meditating, you're quieting the monkey mind, you're waiting for those without a doubt signs and the little intuitive hits, the synchronicities and all that. You're listening, and it's a bi-directional conversation. It's communication both ways. It's beautiful. And so when I listened and heard what the higher purpose was of that tooth that had to get pulled out and replaced with an implant, and this was over a decade ago now, it was, one, a reminder of my impermanence, two, a wake-up call to not get too caught up in the vanity of being able to look 10 years younger than I did, prior to my makeover, because I was really quite proud of that. Like, everybody's saying, Stephan, every time I see you, year after year, you keep looking younger and younger. How do you do that? You're like that Dorian Gray painting or whatever. I would never get tired of that, and it would feed my ego, and it was vanity. So having these sorts of wake-up calls that say, Stephan, you need to get with the program here. Everything in this physical reality is impermanent.
Yes.
So it was for my highest best good, and every single thing that we think of as a major life event, most of those probably were part of our soul contract, which means that we agreed prior to incarnating to do these things, to be here in this difficult time. It's not really difficult depending on what your perspective is. It's only difficult if you don't have the long view of the hundreds of lifetimes and the path towards ascension and all that sort of stuff. Like, if you think that this is it, and you got dealt a really bad deck of cards for this one single lifetime, the only shot that you get, I could see how this would feel really unfair and unjust and difficult. And if we take a longer view of this, do maybe a past life regression with a hypnotherapist, so you can kind of glimpse some of your past lifetimes. Start seeing things with a bigger picture perspective. Everything shifts.
Yes, I 100% agree. I mean, we often talk about looking at something, it's not something that's just 10 feet, 5 feet in front of you, but just looking all the way down the line and getting it, and it helps change your perspective on what's happening right now in this moment. And as you said, when you factor in that this is just one lifetime of many, and there's so much that comes in from our past lifetimes and comes in from our ancestral lineage, it just changes your perspective. What's happening.
By the way, a great book is Many Lives, Many Masters. Have you read that?
One of my favorites. I've probably gifted a dozen of those books at least. I mean, it's one of my absolute favorite. Many Lives, Many Masters, you guys, and you can. It's not even a long book. You could probably get through it in a day, in a few hours. You can get it off of Amazon. But it's a great book.
That's fabulous. It's fabulous. And I'll tell you, if somebody is agnostic or skeptical of all this. Well, one, they're probably not listening to this point. They probably dropped by now. But if they are still listening and identify as a skeptic, two things about that. One is it's a dangerous place to be because skeptic and cynic are really two sides of the same coin. And I don't think anybody wants to be a cynic. And the second point about this is if you ask for miracles and without a doubt signs, you'll get them.
Yes.
And once you get them, it feels a lot more accessible. Like, okay, maybe this is more like a simulation or the Truman Show than what I was thinking this physical reality was like. And then that door is cracked open and all sorts of magic and miracles start happening for you. It is incredible. So just ask for a without a doubt sign. Let's say that you're, this happened to one of my team members. So again, nothing's random. The team that I have are, they're there for a higher purpose, and it's all divinely orchestrated. So one of these team members had an experience where she was driving by herself, but she was talking to her mom in the car, but her mom had passed away several years ago. So she was having a conversation with her mom, and she asked for a without a doubt sign. She's like, I need to know that you actually hear me, that you're listening, and that you're receiving this. Can you send me a sign? And she turns the corner just a second or two later, and right there, blocking her path from continuing on the road, was an owl sitting, like perched on the road, in the middle of the road.
Wow.
And it just stared her down. It was so clear to her that was her mom.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't go anywhere. It stayed there for 5 or 10 minutes. She sent me a video of it. It was incredible. And she said, I wouldn't have asked for that if I hadn't been working for you and hadn't heard you talk about this sort of stuff in your podcast episodes and things. So it's really, really helpful to get a sign like that. For me, one of them was listening to a podcast in the background and reading from a spiritual book. And at the exact moment, I'm reading a word, that word I'm reading in an unrelated podcast comes through.
Wow.
It blew my mind. It never happened to me before.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just a, hey, hello, hope you're doing well. We're just, letting you know we're here. Mm-hmm. There was a purpose to it. So if you're getting angel numbers like 1111 all the time, or 333 or whatever, these aren't just like, hey, how you doing? Mm-hmm. We love you. But it's an invitation to get more of a download from them than just simply, hey there. So I didn't do anything with that. I just kept reading and listening. And so it happened again 5 minutes later.
Wow.
Blew my mind. And I'm like, okay, I got the message. I know I'm supposed to do something with this. I think what I'm supposed to do is to go to the website of this author. And I went there, and then I felt like the next thing I needed to do was join her Patreon community. And I'll just say that joining that Patreon community has changed my life, because there's certain information in there that has been extremely valuable, extremely valuable. I'll share that it was Michelle White Dove. She's a pretty famous medium. And if you feel inclined, you're hearing this now and you think, okay, I can spring $20 a month to be in her Patreon community. And if that feels intuitively right to you, do it. You'll be blown away too. So that came out of nowhere for me. I was just following the intuitive breadcrumbs, and then it got to a point where the angelic realm had to kind of hit me over the head with this to make me realize what I needed to do next.
Amazing. Just beautiful. Stephan, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today and creating the space and the time and sharing all of this with everyone. I think it's profoundly helpful for people to hear other people's journeys and their experiences, and it's just who you are, but it's so generous of you to just share all of it. So thank you so much. And you guys, you see what I love this man. Like, he's just such a beautiful soul, and every single time we chat, it is enriching and just soul filling. So thank you. And I know we're gonna talk soon. Actually, when we jump off, I'm just gonna call you and say hello and a couple of things before I run off to my meeting. But I'm super excited. And you guys, if you don't already know or haven't followed or subscribed, go to Get Yourself Optimized, and also Marketing Speak. I mean, it's two different types of topics and categories, but you will learn so much. Those are Stephan's podcasts, and of course, if you want to check out his genius in the books, then go and look up his name on Amazon. You will find Google Power Search, social e-commerce, and the art of SEO. So thank you guys so
also
much.
StephanSpencer.com has
all of
it in one place.
Go there. and right here where I pinned a comment on the bottom here, that's Stephan's Instagram account. So go check it out, give him a follow. He's got all the information there as well. So thank you so much. Heart you. Please give your little one a kiss and hug for me, and please give Orion a kiss and hug for me. And I will see you guys soon. We're live tomorrow, and it's earlier. It's at 10:45. So see you guys then. All right, bye guys.
Bye bye.